Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's podcast, The Pro Physique Code. Myself, Lexi Maitland, Evan Wells, and we're going to dig into the types of cardio that we should be doing specifically to lose body fat in our difficult areas, glute hamstrings, lower back for men. All of us have experienced, both as athletes and coaches, getting athletes to that place. So we're going to talk about types of cardio, machines, duration, intensities. We're going to really dig into that topic, do's and don'ts. But before we do that, we'll discuss a little bit about the fit model division. There's been some updates. So Evan, I'll let you cover that. I think you have that open right now, right?
Yeah, I'll pull it back up.
That division, honestly, by the time this podcast comes out, there'll be some more news, right? So if you're hearing it here, it's been out for about a week, but I've been putting some stuff on my stories. I'm going to do some stories. I think I'm going to do a reel and review all the possibilities for pro cards now for women, because if you take the bikini and all these fit model pro cards, I mean, there's well over 200 IFBB pro cards going to be handed out next year for women. That's wild to me. And then we want to talk a little bit about your cruise, Lexi. I want to hear about this cruise.
Okay, yeah, I am your new cruise phenom. Like, I love cruises. That is the only way I will travel for leisure.
So I don't know if there's any shows we can go to that are cruise. Maybe there's a Bahamas show that we can go to.
There is a Bahamas show.
Yeah.
Well, the next cruise I'm going on, I want to say it's 2 weeks before Girl Power, because that is a date I was like, I'm not missing that. But the next cruise I'm going on, it's the Utopia of the Seas out of Port Canaveral, and it's Royal Caribbean's newest ship, and I'm so excited.
Do you do like all the slides and because they have like skimboarding and they have like crazy stuff on those ships?
Yeah, so on Utopia, abso-freaking-lutely, I'm going to do everything. This ship I just went on, though, was a smaller ship, so there wasn't as many activities like that, but there were still shows at night. There was a belly flop contest, karaoke. Yeah.
Do you do the excursions and things like that when you go on cruises, or you just, because that's, I think, where cruises are cheap, but that's where everything starts to get expensive.
Yeah, so I didn't this time around on this one. I kind of just wanted to more so, like, I went to Cozumel and I just wanted to kind of explore on my own, and I didn't want to do any type of excursions. But I think the next cruise I will probably do one, depending on what my family wants to do. But I like to just do all the activities on board. Like, I think that's part of what makes a cruise fun, is doing all the things on board. I love watching the belly flop contest. That's like, I don't know, it's so silly, but it's really funny to watch that. And no, I did not participate in that, but that's fun. The shows were great on the cruise I was just on, but I'm really excited for the Utopia of the Seas, because it's like the big ship, probably, gosh, at least double the size of the one I was just on. So there will be a lot of activities. And I also too, like, I'm uploading a YouTube video from the cruise right now, but I always get asked like about the food on the ships. And personally, I think it's pretty easy to, like, I mean, as long as you have self-control.
They'll do whatever you want on the cruise.
Yeah, and well, they have like the all-inclusive Windjammer is what it's called. It's like the all-inclusive buffet that they open up 3 times a day for each meal. Like, I was easily able to find, like, there's fresh fruit, there's a salad bar, there's always like some sort of lean meat that's not doused in butter and oil. And then of course, like, there's a lot of other options, but I find that it's like, I would say if you're in prep, it's a pretty realistic like trip to take. I mean, plus you're also getting in so many steps by just walking around all day.
I always take the stairs too, because they have the elevators, but the stairs are right next to the elevator. And if you go up those stairs 4 or 5 times a day, you're moving.
Oh yeah, I mean, easily getting like 18 to 20,000 steps each day without even like really like, it wasn't like I was just like going out and walking, because like that was just me getting in a normal amount of steps, and that was on a small ship too.
Here's the question: how many frozen margaritas and tequila shots did you have?
Me? Oh, no frozen margaritas on this ship, because that. It was actually not that like when we left Tampa, it was pretty chilly outside. And it was only like really hot in Cozumel. But
Yeah.
I will say, oh, goodness, I got many people wanting me to test their tequila in Cozumel because I walked around by myself for a little while. And
The
I
sounds fishy.
Lexi, you don't take
Lexi,
tequila from strangers
testing
when you're by
tequila from
yourself in
strangers in foreign
Mexico.
I did
countries frowned
no, I
upon.
did not. I did not. But just beware, people listening, if you ever go to Cozumel in a port, like there's all those little shops outside and be prepared. They like every person that you walk by, oh, senorita, or I got, oh, do you need a bodyguard? Or oh, do you need a Mexican boyfriend? Or oh, come try my tequila, or try like it was a little annoying. I ended up just like getting
Yeah.
back on the ship, but
You're a
yeah,
passport girl. You
fair
just go over there to
warning.
find a husband.
I
I'm
mean,
pretty
they're
sure.
good,
I'm pretty
they're
sure
fishy.
they don't mind if we just moved on into
I'm
Mexico.
pretty
There.
sure. Right.
I
Yeah,
don't think. I don't think they're like, hey, you can only stay 60 days.
yeah, it was, yeah, but Cozumel was really pretty. The water was beautiful. And the weather was like perfect. It was
Like
like,
mid 70s, probably, right?
oh yeah, like
Yeah,
78, 80. I mean, it was humid, but we're used to that in Florida. And the
of course.
water was just so pretty and blue and yeah, it was gorgeous. So it was a fun time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've said this many times, Lexi, so I know you don't take it as an insult, but you're the world's youngest grandma. So the fact that you're starting to get into cruise life in your 20s is really funny to me.
Yeah. No Tulums and finding herself. It's cruises and shows.
Yeah.
I love cruises. Yeah. But
No,
yeah,
no spring break. It's like I want to see a comedian and be in bed by 9.
Yep. Get my steps in and cardio and eat low fat foods and no frozen margaritas.
I will say, like, because I did a Royal Caribbean, not last year, but the year before, and the gym on there was amazing. It was
Really?
like the whole level of the front of the boat, and I mean,
yeah.
I loved it.
So this was the second Royal cruise I went on, and this one was out of Tampa. And like I said, it was a smaller ship. So the gym was like, I mean, it got the job done. I just ended up doing like kind of a deload style because there was not really a ton. But the ship I went on last year actually had a really good gym. And I totally think that the ship I'm going on in April will probably have a
The
huge gym.
the 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 boats that come out of Tampa are much smaller because the water isn't deep. But if you go over to the Atlantic, so I went out of Miami and that boat was massive. And there was a boat next to us that was like twice the size. Like some of those boats are like,
Yes.
you're like, how is this
Humongous,
floating?
man.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm really curious about in April because I'm going on the Utopia, and that is, it's like the biggest, if not, I think it's either the biggest or the second biggest cruise ship in the world.
There we
So
go.
I'm excited. I'm going to be in heaven. I may not sleep that cruise ship because I'll probably just want to do everything, but we'll see.
Perfect. Well, let's talk about quickly the update. So there was some updates on the requirements to compete at a national or at a pro qualifier in the fit model division. And then they also announced all the shows which will have pro cards, which is all the shows that have bikini pro cards. So Evan, you have that in front of you?
Yes, it says the qualifier compete in an IFBB Pro qualifying contest fit model division. Competitors must compete in one NPC contest prior to that show. If you compete in NPC contest in 2024, that serves as a qualification to compete in the fit model division only. With that,
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
in a qualifying contest in 2025. And then they came out the list of how many pro cards they're giving out, how many divisions they're going to have at the national shows. I'm glad they came out with this. I think it is helpful. Do you want me to go over that?
Yeah, just quickly, just say, because I know
Okay.
like Junior USA's is 4 classes, class winners, so they kind of
Yes.
announced that.
So we'll go over the standard non-tested shows first, the typical national shows we've had in the past
Yep.
year. So Junior USA's is 4 height classes, class winners. Junior Nationals, 4 classes, class winners. Universe, 4 classes, top 2 in each height class. USA's is 4 height classes, top 2 in each height class. So USA and Universe, the 2 options, are giving out 2 pro cards per height class. North Americans is 4 classes and class winners. And Nationals, I'm sorry, the Nationals is 4 high classes in top 2. The Ben Weeder and the Pittsburgh Pro, the 4 high classes in top 2 in the overalls at those 2 classes. And then pro cards. The breakdown for the national shows with the master divisions will be available at individual contest websites in the near future. So seems like they will be giving out masters pro cards as well at these shows, but they haven't given out specifics about that yet.
Yeah, because the difference with the Masters, I would guess it's going to be the overall for each category, but
Yeah.
if they decide to do the class winner, I mean, we're talking about close to 300 pro cards next year between bikini
Yeah.
and fit model. Um, just
I,
very
I
interesting. They
I'm
also did
interested to
not
know how many
say,
masters divisions they're going to have for these shows too. If it's
right,
just like
yeah.
over 35 and that's
Yeah, it
it,
could be
or
35 like A and B, and it's just the class winners. That's probably what they'll do because right now at like nationals, they have 35 A through H
yeah,
all get a pro card.
Yeah, I'm still very curious, and I think I said this in the last podcast. I'm still very curious to see how many masters do this division, just because I don't know. I feel like it's not to say that masters can't do this division. I just feel like a lot more masters competitors almost fit the bikini criteria a little bit better.
yeah,
So I'm just really curious to see like how many masters actually do try this division. I'm sure we'll probably see a good amount, especially this first year, because like nobody really kind of knows what to expect quite yet, but I'll just be curious to see those numbers.
yeah. And the first run of it's going to be here at the LA Fit Expo here in a few weeks. I was actually talking to a client about that last night, and how I'm really interested to see the numbers that come out for it.
I am very curious about that too. And Paul will have to keep us updated because I know he's going to that show.
Hmm.
But
Well,
yeah,
no, I've actually, just so you guys know, I've actually canceled that trip. I don't feel right about going out to LA while they're going through this entire tragedy, taking up a Airbnb that could be used for. So I actually canceled my Airbnb and my flights because I'm like, there's no way in 10 days time that that city's going to be prepared to host an event like the Fit Expo. I just, it just felt icky to me to be like, hey, I'm coming to LA to,
right.
go watch a bodybuilding show. And so I have a sneaking suspicion that that expo may get canceled, but I don't know. They've probably already gotten all the vendors to pay. So they may still have it. And I'm sure the locals will go, but I'm not flying into LA right now to just, it just, it just
Uh,
feels
that-
wrong.
yeah, no, that's a good point. I have not seen that as far as I know, it's still happening. But you're right. I think a lot of people are probably going to be in your same position too. Of like, it just feels kind of
Yeah,
I know that somebody who I know who lives out there, she did mention the convention center was far from the fires, but still,
yeah,
I mean, it's far from the fires, but when you consider there's 8 or 10,000 people that are not in their homes, they've got
right.
to go somewhere. And if you go like the downtown area, there are tons of Airbnbs there. It's one of the reasons I've enjoyed traveling to Fit Expo because you can get an Airbnb fairly easily. But I'm like, where are all those people going to be staying and stuff? So I don't know.
yeah,
And I don't know. It just feels weird to go somewhere and enjoy while so many people are just.
yeah, yeah. I'm looking
Absolutely.
at it right now, like where the fires are in relationship to LA. It's not terribly far, maybe an hour. It
Oh,
looks.
it's not even that far. Well, it's an hour in LA traffic. It's probably 15 miles or less. Like I've been to LA like 100 times. Like I had a
You're
friend
right.
that lived there. And like the distance from downtown LA to the Palisades or to like Malibu, 20 to
Yeah,
minutes
you're
if
right.
there's no
It's like
traffic.
20, 25 minutes. Yeah.
But yeah, it's an hour. But who knows what's going on with emergency services and all these things. And they still don't even have the fires under control. And I've actually been out there years ago. I mean, when I was like in my 20s, my girlfriend's family lived out there. And so I went out there during those Santa Ana winds, and they're hurricane strength winds. Like they're coming off that mountain at 80 to 100 miles an hour. There were, when I was out there, this was in, I'm freaking old, the 90s. I remember the next morning after hearing them howl all night, there were semi trucks, dozens of them, like knocked over from these winds. So you imagine that happening with fire. And there's videos. It looks like a blowtorch. Like it's just fire is just being pushed. It's unbelievable to me. It's almost I've been watching a lot of stuff. Yeah, so I'm sure they're still going to have it unless the city tells them they can't. Almost like a situation that happened with the Arnold, where the Arnold was going to happen, but the governor of Ohio was like, "No,
Yeah.
do not come here." Um, Now I
I don't
still
think
went to
they'll do
that.
that, but I completely understand where you're coming from there, Paul.
Yeah, me too. Me
So
too. Yeah, so I mean, I guess, and then, well, there is another show in, I forget the name of it, but it's in Vegas in February.
Hmm.
That'll be the second show that has Fit Model, and I forget what that's called. It's the one that Kay Leo won the overall at last year. Like,
yeah,
I,
I think it's a muscle contest too.
yeah,
Yeah, I believe it is.
yeah, so that'll be like the second show that we see Fit Model at, and then, yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Have
just be
they?
curious what the numbers are like because it's also so early in the year. I mean, even just the bikini shows last year at this time of year. I mean, I think I looked at LA Fit Expo. I think there was 18, 12 or 18 girls in bikini
Yeah.
total at the Fit Expo last year. So I
I,
think the early on shows are going to be very small because the bikini is going to be smaller because some of those girls are new to fit model and there's just not a lot of people competing at this time. So
yeah.
at least
Yeah.
that's what I expect.
Since I missed last week here, Lexi, have they finalized? Because I know there was some debate kind of on the bikini bottoms, and they were going back and forth with that. Have they finalized what that's standard is going to be yet for suit makers?
Yeah, as far as I know, scrunch is allowed because without a scrunch, it would like fit like a
Diaper.
diaper, right? So I think that it is finalized. So it's like the plain suit, the scrunch, which is like comparable to like the bottom coverage would be comparable to, I would say, if somebody were to get like a Brazilian cut
Okay.
for the bottoms. No crystal connectors. And then I believe it's just, I don't think they've said specifically like, so not to get all in depth on like the fabrics, but there's like, there's a matte option, there's the hologram, which is a little bit of a shine, there's velvet,
Mhm.
and like you could do any of those on a bikini suit, but I don't know specifically for Fit Model if they're going to allow all three. But I'm going to be getting a suit soon from Angel. They're going to send me like their Fit Model suit, so I'll have that to kind of reference and show too.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested to see if they'll allow like designs on it. If you could just go to like Neiman Marcus and buy a bikini out the rack or something like that and wear it.
Right.
Like I'm interested to know if they'll allow that or if it needs to be a actual competition suit.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I mean, they don't, I feel like that, how do they don't have any way of knowing, right? If like somebody bought the suit from Angel Competition Bikinis or like, let's just say like off the
Mhm.
rack, right? Obviously, I think that, in
It,
a division that I think is going to be big on your presence, your beauty, your overall look,
mhm.
would I personally risk buying a random suit from a store, off the rack? Probably not, especially because like the Fit Model suits from most of the big suit companies, they're not that expensive compared to like bikini suits. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
It's funny because as soon as I said that, I thought about that. The only other division that you can buy a suit off the rack is what I do, men's physique, right?
Yeah.
Like every suit I bought, I've gone to like Hurley and bought them.
Okay.
There are some suit makers, like I have some dark sports and things like that, but most people don't use like suit makers for their board shorts. So I just don't know if it's going to be something kind of like that because a lot of those things don't fit me that those people
Right.
make. So I get it and actually go get them tailored down. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, when I get the suit, I'll show you guys because I'll probably like try it on just to see like just so you can see
Awesome.
like the comparison of a bikini
Well, I'll
suit.
be really curious if even some girls don't even bother with the suit maker and just go find a cute suit at Target or,
That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
because ultimately that they're not going to be judging the suit, right? They're trying to get away from that. I think that's why they're not allowing stoned suits. So if they start to see like really customized suits with special fabrics, they might be like, hey, calm down.
Right.
And honestly, too, like what I do is I would go and try on 20 different types of board shorts and be like, which ones fit me the best. I can imagine girls are going to be the same thing because suits
That's what I
fit
did
people
last time I
differently,
competed.
right?
Yeah.
And if they can go and try on 30 different suits and they find a suit that fits them awesome, why wouldn't they use that?
Yep. Yep. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's not the same for women's bikinis, but like the board shorts that I wear on stage, those things get put away pretty quick. They are because they're like the waist is super tiny. Like
Yeah.
I'm not wearing those things.
No,
Every now and then I'll be able to try to put them on. I'm like, nope.
out of bounds.
Yep. That doesn't
All
go
right,
over the
cardio.
old like.
So speaking of not being able to wear our board shorts, I guess it's cardio talk time.
Let's talk about
Nice segue there, right?
so Lexi, you had so for those that are listening still, because we've been rambling now, we are really getting into the comments and replying to the comments. And so for this week's comment, we want to make sure everybody leaves a message for Evan's cat. Evan, show your cat off. We want to everybody give a shout out in the comments to Queen Pearl.
Queen Pearl.
Oh, there she goes. There she
Big
goes.
stretch.
Hi.
She's a sweet. She's so yeah, leave a comment, let us know you're listening. But One of our
I love it.
commenters left some great questions that I felt was a great. So this is, if you guys literally leave us questions, this is where we know what you guys' interests are. And we're going to talk about. So let's dig into these. Lexi, why don't you read them off so we can kind of break them down one by
Yeah.
one?
So basically, we're gonna hone it in on shout out to Laura. She commented lots of questions, but they were all centered around the topic of cardio. So we'll touch on all of them, but just in a nutshell, she said she'd love to hear a cardio special. She said, so some of the questions that we're gonna dive into are what are your personal favorite forms of cardio and why? What to do and use at what stage in prep? Do we encourage a certain machine or types of cardio with the client? Do we go by whatever will make or whatever like to get it done. She wants us to talk a little bit about the difference between like list, hit, and yeah, so we're gonna basically talk all about, cardio and I guess how we approach it and manipulate it in prep specifically for our clients. So yeah, so I guess we'll start off with the first question that she asked is what are our personal favorite forms or modalities of cardio for our clients and why? And I know we've talked briefly about this before. I know on your YouTube you have a lot of videos, Paul, but about this. But what would you guys say personally is your guys' favorite cardio modality for clients in prep?
I'll let
Me,
Evan start because I know he's got some specific thoughts on this. But I love this topic because
yeah, it's a great topic.
I've done it all over 15 years of competing myself, all the trendy stuff that's come out, all the science that's come out, all the anecdote. And so I kind of have a very strong stance on my philosophy on this. But I will say this, one size does not fit all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of it boils down to how much time do you have. I think that's the number one constraint for people. If you have, I think walking and getting your daily need up as high as you possibly can is awesome. But for some people, that's not really necessarily in the cards, right? And especially during the work week. My biggest thing is what can you get your heart rate up the easiest and is the least taxing on your body? That is going to be my number one overall choice for things. If people can get on elliptical and they can get their heart rate up where it needs to be in a good fat burning zone, I am 100% cool with that. Some people, if they are cardiovascular system is very very strong, and that happens with a lot of people that are cardio bunnies and want to do cardio a lot in the off season with that, they may need to do something like the stairmaster to be able to get their heart rate up where it is, especially earlier on in a prep with things, right, while their energy is there, while they're able to do it. But as prep goes on, things change. Again, one size doesn't fit all, right? Like I have people on time and duration and heart rate. I have people on just time and duration with no heart rate goals. If they're self-motivated and they don't really need it, I still want to track it so I can kind of see. And I have some people that will work off like a calorie burn situation with that. So if they're a little more worn down, and then, they can go on a walk for 45 minutes if they want to, or they can hop on the Stairmaster for 20 minutes if they want to hit that calorie mark, or they can mix and match, right? Because again, it's not a one size fits all sort of thing. Paul?
Yeah, I don't know, my philosophy is always around finding cardio that kind of fits their lifestyle. I had one client last year who did not do any cardio in prep, none. She was a bartender.
Oh, I remember who you were talking
I
about.
remember
She
that. Yep.
did at
Amber.
her, right? Yeah, yeah,
She
yeah.
actually won Masters at Hurricane. She won her age overall at Masters.
Oh yeah.
Um, but for her, it was hard to keep weight on her. I mean, there were times in prep where she was eating 300 carbs a day, as a woman. So like, but that's pretty rare. Most people don't have jobs where they're getting 25,000. And if you've ever bartended, that's not steps. That's like hustle, you know. So, but I've always I like to start with the least common denominator. Can we get by with just taking some steps? Can we just track steps? If I have someone check in and they're getting a lot of steps and they're not dropping, then that's when I go, okay, now, I did a video on my YouTube channel, I think it was last year, where I wore a heart rate monitor and did like 6 or 7 different types of cardio. And the average calories burned for just walking outside, just casual walk, was about 200 an hour. I got that up to 500 an hour walking on an incline with a vest on.
Mm-hmm.
So anywhere in between there, you can adjust based on your availability, your time schedule. I don't like the vest just because it kind of taxes me. but
Yeah.
I can still get over 500 calories just walking on an incline without the vest. I just have to walk a little faster. But so what I like to do is start to track the time, bring up the intensity, and then I may start tracking the calories burned during the session, not because I'm doing the equation of, oh, you burned this many calories and that means you're burning. I don't believe in that, because our body is too dynamic, it's too adaptive. But if you do a cardio session on a machine and you burn 300 calories and you stall, if you use that same machine on the same settings but get it up to 400 calories, I know you're putting in more effort,
Yep.
and that's what I'll do. So I guess flat walking is the lowest, stairs is the highest, right? When you get on those stairs, you are burning calories. You're also probably going to burn up a little bit of muscle. I just believe that mini lunge that you're doing thousands of times. I did one prep where I did some stairs because I did a show, put on too much weight, and I had to get back down quick, and I did stairs. And I noticed, even with leg training, eating all my protein, my legs got smaller on those damn stairs. So
That's one thing I'll do too, is I'll track glute measurements. Obviously, I think we all do that. And if I really start to see it decline, I'll pull it back. And that's a conversation too, again, right? Like, how much time do we have? How far do we need to go with that? And Paul, you bring up a great point with the weight vest, because I used to wear weight vest on my walks, and people always bring up, and that we all have had these conversations where they'll say, I just can't get my heart rate up anymore. It's hard to get my heart rate up. Well, number one, your body's adaptive. And number two, if you've lost 20 pounds, put on a 20-pound weight vest and get back on that thing and see how quick your heart rate gets up. You're not carrying as much body weight.
Yep.
It is a massive difference. When I was on a prep, I lost 50 pounds. I put a 25-pound weight vest on halfway through and walked. I was gassed trying to walk around the block.
Have you seen the guy that did that interesting experiment where every time he lost a pound, he would wear a vest all day with that pound? So he
No.
was down like 20, 25 pounds, and he never had to adjust his diet after that first adjustment because he was adjusting his body weight. But I mean, imagine wearing a vest around all day with 25 pounds by the end of it. But it does bring up an interesting point. We talk about, the metabolism adapting. Well, what if the metabolism is not adapting and we are adapting to weighing less? So we just have to burn and expend less energy, which makes sense. I mean, you weigh less. It's easier. It's more efficient for your body to move. It doesn't burn as many calories. I mean, how many calories do you think an obese person would burn walking for 15 minutes?
Right. Yeah,
Way easier for them to make their heart rate up too.
I think
Way
a lot
more
of
than we would burn. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people too, especially when there is a fat loss goal at hand, so aka like being in prep, I think a lot of people get really hung up on like what cardio modality is going to be the hardest and most gruesome, and what they are going to burn the most on. And sometimes it's a little bit, I mean, I think it is important to push yourself in cardio, especially if you're using it as a fat loss tool variable. But that's why we can kind of get into in a sec too, like why we prefer like steady state cardio over HIIT, because sometimes, if you're going super vigorously on a cardio machine, well, that's great. Maybe you're burning a lot of calories in the process, but you get off and your recovery lags and stalls. You can't push as hard in your training. Your overall NEAT throughout the day goes down because you're a lot more gassed from that cardio session, right? So it's like, it's not just about how much or how many calories you're burning in that cardio session. It's about, okay, how is that going to either positively or negatively impact the rest of your day? So, impact training intensity. And that's a big thing. Like I always talk to my clients about is in prep, I know cardio has to get high for certain people, but I don't want it compromising our training intensity, right? So, if that means that a client, maybe they really love cycling or they really love the Stairmaster, but maybe we need to, transition all their cardio onto something very low impact, like, the elliptical or incline walking towards the end of prep, so that they can keep their training intensity in the gym under the weights as high as possible.
And again, that's why we, especially as coaches, we need enough time to prep before a show. All this stuff is awesome. But if you got 20 pounds to go and you think you're going to do it in 12 weeks and you think you're not going to lose any muscle and you think training's not going to suffer, it's not going to happen. Like, something has to give with this. So I understand a lot of people want to prep for less time with things, but the more time that you give, the better your training intensity is going to be throughout everything. The more we can worry about all of that stuff too.
Right. And I think it's also important, like to just, at least this is the way I look at it. I always tell people, like cardio, especially as a physique athlete who's prepping for a bodybuilding competition, it is basically used as a variable, right? That we can manipulate to get somebody lean. Some people have to use more of it than others, but I think some people out there, they do a lot of cardio. Like they'll come to me, they're not in prep, they have a lot of body fat to drop, and they're doing a lot of cardio because they love it or they think it's what they need to be doing. And they think it's great, but it's also like if you have 20 plus pounds to lose for a bodybuilding prep, and you're already, at the beginning of prep doing 30 minutes of cardio or 40 minutes of cardio, 6 days a week, it's like you have to realize that's where we're starting with your baseline of cardio. And we're going to have to build on that to, use cardio as a variable that's going to help us get stage lean. So it's always ideal that somebody is starting a prep with a lower baseline of cardio so we can build upon that.
Yeah.
I call them unicorns, people that haven't either prepped with a bad coach before, because if you've had a coach put you on 0 carbs, lettuce and oil and, 2 hours of stairs, it probably works once, maybe twice, but you will get to a place where no matter what you do, you can't lose body fat and you can't even maintain a body composition that you're happy with. So every now and then I get these unicorns. And this year I've noticed I've had a lot of conversations with people that are new to the sport, and they're not really terribly, consistent with their food. Maybe they're eating, 2,500 calories or doing no cardio. They're maintaining a really good body composition. And I'm like, this is going to be easy, right? Like, because usually I'm, with a competitor that's done multiple seasons of competing, they've built up this resistance to fat loss through, competing either too frequently or too low calorie and too high cardio. So yeah, that is the athletes that I have that stick around post show. I mean, it's a noticeable difference. I make a post every now and then. I have an athlete right now that's in prep that we started prep at over 300 carbs, 70 fat, and she's 130 pounds, and she's going to be 118 on stage. So we have 12, 13 pounds to lose. And she won an overall last time she did a show, which was 2023, but she also checked in with me for the entire year. So like, I realize that's an ideal situation, but that's the norm for the doing it the right way. Right. So ideally we are managing that process to set you up. I call it kind of metabolic positioning. That's kind of the word I use when I'm like doing my video check-ins. I'm like, hey, we want to improve your metabolic positioning before prep starts. So now I have a little calculation in my head of where their body weight is, where their calories are, right? So what's the multiplier? 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, and then cardio. So, if I can get their cardio down to 15 minutes a couple times a week, I can get their calories up to 17, 18, 20 times their body weight. I'm like, this is going to be smooth.
Yeah.
Should be, right? It should be
Right.
smooth.
Right.
Absolutely.
This is so this is well, not interesting, but this question I think we can address pretty easily. So this person also asked like do we like to know the details of, or do we give our clients details in terms of cardio? So for example, like do we tell them I want you to do an incline walking at level this, speed of this, or like do we give them the levels that they should be at for the cardio machines? I think this is an easy question we can kind of touch on.
No.
Same.
Not
Again,
initially. Not initially. I may get that granular. I may get on a phone call and be like, okay, what are you actually doing?
Right.
and
Every
I'm
oh,
sorry,
go
Lacey, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say every once in a while I'll have a client that like puts, their metrics of like, oh, I'm going at this speed on the treadmill at this incline, and I'll be not to put everybody in the same box, but sometimes I'll be able to say, okay, that's probably not that intense. Let's bump that up a little bit. But generally, like with my clients, I give them like a rate of perceived exertion of like, okay, this is around the intensity level that I want your cardio at. And a lot of times for steady state cardio, I like to use the analogy of like, imagine that you're running like a half marathon or a marathon, right? Think of that like that steady pace. You get breathy, you're breaking a sweat, but you can also arguably hold a conversation within it, right? And you can go for a long spurt of time. And that's generally the intensity I want clients to embody in their steady state cardio sessions.
Yeah. Again, I'm a big fan of heart rate goals. I think that is a really good, that way you don't have to perceive the exertion, right? You kind of know the rate that it's going with it. I think if I see someone's heart rate not being where it needs to be, then I will suggest, I was like, you need to go get on a Stairmaster and you need to bust ass one day on there and tell me how you feel. And that heart rate will go from like the 102s that they thought they were trying to put effort into to 152. And then guess what happens that week? Their weight falls through the floor. And it's like, it doesn't have to be the Stairmaster. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
But like things, it also depends on, again, each person's individual, right? For me, walking on an incline treadmill wrecks my ankles, just wrecks it. I wish it didn't, but
Hmm.
systemically on my body, it hurts me. But I can get on a Stairmaster and I feel better, way better on a
You think it's because
Stairmaster.
you're so top heavy, like an orange on a toothpick?
Could be. Could also be my super long legs that go to my ears and also the orange on a toothpick thing. Yeah, it's it's and that's mainly my calves, Paul.
You don't
Jeez.
think your massive calves can support the the weight of that
Yeah,
upper body?
that's probably what it is, honestly, with it. It's my ankles are like poor body. They can't hold this massive calf weight up. I know. It's a
Uh,
tough life.
well, another question that was asked, Lexi, that I think is worth addressing is what specific type of cardio do we use to target a certain area? So, I've heard these arguments before about, well, to target the fat on the glutes or the hamstrings, you've got to do this kind of cardio or this kind of training, or to target the fat on the glutes, you've got to take this type of drugs. That was a topic that came up last year. I mean, when you understand human physiology and you've been doing this a long time, I would listen, I would have all my clients doing the magic cardio if that was it. You got to think of fat loss, and this is one of my most common analogies is it's either a pool or a paper towel. So whichever analogy you want to look at. To get the fat off of like a stubborn area for men, lower back, even glutes and hamstrings for men, but specifically for women, thighs, quads, hamstrings, glutes, you've just got to unroll that paper towel roll until you get to those last couple paper towels. And so you've got to unravel all that body fat. Same with the pool. You've got to scrape the water out of the pool, the top of that, and that's all the body fat that's like normal. And honestly, sometimes I've had women, and we've all seen this, get completely shredded in the upper body. And they'll get feedback like, well, your upper body's too lean, but we
Too
want your
hard.
lower body a little bit leaner. And then I'll talk to they're like, okay, coach, how do we do this? I go, well, that's not possible because the body's not going to dip into those fat stores until that part of your body is, and that's everyone's genetic predisposition. So yeah, you just got to, and usually what most people are doing is they're running out of time or like they're making enough progress but they're getting to their show ahead of schedule and they're not ready. I'm sorry, they're getting to their show and they're a little behind schedule for getting lean enough because most people don't anticipate how hard those last little bits of fat are, right? And the other problem is they're crashing into the show and so they hit a stall that they can't get out of.
Yep.
And they don't really know how to take diet breaks, how to recover, how to set themselves up to make more progress, because the last thing some people want to do when they get close to stage and they're not ready is recover. And that's exactly really usually what you need. How many people do you talk to after a show? They're like, yeah, after the show I just couldn't stop dropping weight. Like, yeah, because you stopped hammering yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And I do find too with cardio, at the beginning of prep, especially if you're starting cardio off at a lower amount, usually it's not going to take much to get that heart rate up, right? Like I had a client who texted me last week and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm loving how easily my heart rate is getting up from like starting cardio and prep." But then the more you do it, you'll find towards the end of prep, the more you do it, and then also the less you weigh, it is harder sometimes to get your heart rate up and to feel like you can actually kind of get breathy and get winded during your cardio sessions. So that's when I think personally, like the calorie goal can be helpful for certain clients if they're really struggling with that. Because I've had clients before that, they'll tell me, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing what I was doing, a month ago in prep, but I'm just really having a hard time like getting breathy and feeling like I'm working during my cardio." So that's when sometimes I think the calorie goal can be helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think one of the things that helped me become a better coach years ago was not just focusing on the cardio goal. Because one of my, I look back at my early preps and I had a cardio goal, but when prep started, I was doing other things. I was going out and playing basketball. I was active. And then when prep started, I quit all that other stuff and just did the cardio. And then I realized looking back, years later, like, oh, so I was basically just exchanging cardio for things I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Whereas I could have just kept
Yeah.
more of the basketball and stuff, and had to do less cardio.
Yeah.
So
And
now I like to look at someone's daily activity and go, okay, what's your day like?
yeah, that is something I don't know if I've always done this, but like I do it on all my consult calls now is I always ask people, what does your day look like, right? Like, do you sit all day for work? Do you have an active job? Do you have 3 kids and you're running around with them throughout the day? Because like, yeah, I think that the NEAT and the movement throughout the rest of the day outside of your cardio and your weight training session, like that is so important. And I think it's important to keep that higher throughout prep because naturally when you're in prep and you're dropping body fat without even realizing it, you're gonna start moving less throughout the rest of your day. And the NEAT activity can be a really kind of easy way to keep dropping body fat without even really having to quote unquote try that hard.
Yeah.
I have a hell week protocol. I call it hell week or hell weekend.
Huh?
Where let's say we're like, okay, we've got to get this last bit of fat off and we're getting close to our deadline. Um, and you get the buy-in from the athlete, like just tell me what to do. I'll walk backwards, I'll eat dirt, whatever. And so I'll have them do 2 cardio sessions, usually 60-minute AM and a 60-minute PM.
Hmm.
But I'll tell them you're not allowed to sit down.
Mhm.
So you're done with your cardio, you go home, you get cleaned up, go to the mall, walk around, go to the zoo, go to a theme park, go be active, go to a park, just be, because I think that's where when we get deep into prep, we just, because of low body fat, low calories, we're exhausted. We just do the bare minimum and then sit still.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so if you can pull people out of that, you don't necessarily have to have them do more cardio. You can just be like, hey, be active. And they might even enjoy that because they're, out. How many times have we been in prep and the hardest part is the weekend when you're not at work, you're at home and you're like, gosh, I'm starving. It's because your mind isn't busy or occupied.
And
absolutely. Like it sounds kind of silly, but I think a lot of girls listening can probably relate. I've been like before, like, if I'm having a really hard prep day, and usually it does come on the weekends when you're not as busy, I'll go like drive to Target or, drive to the mall. Not that I need anything, but I just go and I walk around. And not only am I getting in more steps, but my brain is occupied because I'm like, watching, I'm looking at, like things in shops. So like that is so helpful. And because it is so easy if you're at home, it's so easy. I mean, unless you have a walking pad, it's easy to just sit there and do nothing. And then your brain is consumed about, with how hungry you are, with how tired you are. So I think one of the best diet hacks is like getting out of the house and just going to look around at stores. Or if you live in a really pretty area, maybe there's a park or there's like, a pretty place to walk that can kind of distract you.
yeah, I've actually started instituting that as well, Paul, since you told me about that a while ago. Like double cardio on the weekends and not sitting down. One thing that I always try to monitor as well, like how's people feeling, how's your energy levels too, right?
Yep.
And if energy levels are down in the dumpster with things with that, a lot of times I'll say, we'll take those days off from the gym too. Let's just focus on fat loss
Yeah.
here for a few days. Because if you start putting training on top of that too, especially if food is low, that's going to get really, really hard, even
Yep.
harder than it already is. What's your thoughts on that part, Paul?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't have them training on that kind of a weekend. I'll
Yeah.
use that as like and I'll have the calories pretty low. So the goal will
Mhm.
literally be to just dip into those fat stores, um, create as big of a deficit as possible. So you don't want to train because, so for those that aren't real familiar, training is going to make you hungrier. Whenever someone's like, "Oh, I'm
Absolutely.
starving," exercise burns glycogen. Glycogen depletion is what creates hunger. This is why years ago when HIIT cardio was all the rage, when I first did my first prep, I was starving and I thought it was the low body fat and low calories. Well, fast forward a decade when I'm still competing and I never do HIIT cardio, I don't have anywhere near the hunger levels. Yeah, you get hungry, but when you're depleting glycogen that aggressively, like in a workout or in some HIIT cardio sessions, I found it just makes hunger almost unbearable, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't like using HIIT cardio for that reason. So yeah, a workout, especially a pretty intense lower body day, is going to leave you like ready to rip through some
Being,
food.
And I don't know about you, Paul, but I feel like I've heard you talk about this before, and I find that this is my case. But when you like when you bring hit cardio or like really high impact cardio into the equation, over time, sometimes like especially as food gets lower, you almost just find yourself like anticipating it and like getting almost like nervous for it, right? Whereas when you have just like a steady state incline walking session, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, no big deal, right? It's not like you have to like muster up like the courage to want to do it when, whereas if you know you have a really hard, gruesome, like high impact cycling class or like hit session, like, ugh, I mean, you may like that at the beginning of prep, but then towards the end of prep, when your food is low, your cardio is high, you're almost going to get that like anxiety throughout the day of like, ooh, leading up to that hit session.
Yeah, because you know how bad the recovery is going to be and how bad you're going to feel after it.
Yeah,
Not to
absolutely.
mention that it increases injury risk. And that's the first thing that kind of popped in my head, Paul, when you were talking about like playing basketball and things like that. What I worry about with people, especially towards the end of prep at times, is the amount of cardio you're doing, low food training. Your body is in a state to where injuries can happen. And that's where you need to be smart about some things, and just be very, very conscious of that, right? Like if you're feeling kind of tired, and we know what that's feeling. It's like if you're walking and you kind of step off a curb and you don't really realize it's there and you kind of lose your balance a little bit, be smart about how you do things outside of it, because if your body is in a severe deficit, your faculties aren't all the way there, your balance isn't going to be quite as good. So just be smart with those kind of decisions, especially as stuff goes on. But like you say, Paul, it's like a funnel, right? Things start at the beginning and you kind of remove things as it goes.
Yeah, I think we get a little bit in our heads in prep, like if we miss a workout or if some other thing changes, that all of a sudden we're going to lose all our muscle, and
Is that right?
that's where a coach can be helpful, to put some common sense into you and step back. And it's probably the thing that, the last time I competed 2 years ago, Evan, I came to see you multiple times for posing practice and just talk about things. Um, that prep for me was very much about enjoying the process and not putting pressure on myself. And it was just a completely different approach. And it just makes the physique better when, instead of pounding it into submission, you're pushing when you can, and then you're pulling back a little bit, and then you push again. Um, and it's quite amazing to me how different the post show experience is when you're not taking these extreme measures to get on stage versus when you do. Um,
Yes. And exactly what you say there, Paul. I love that approach, and I wish a lot of people could use that approach. The main issue that I see with some people that take that approach, and obviously we're wired different than that, but a lot of people will push hard, but when they back off hard, right? They overeat
so
on the
part of me
food. They
thinks that
do a lot of
there
that.
is, so I look back at, again, I always use my own self as, you know, kind of a way to learn from. And I remember my first prep in particular, when prep was over. Now, I wasn't given a plan. This was before the days of having a post-show plan. Back then, when the show was over, it was celebrated that you eat your face off and you're anabolic again.
Yeah.
Um, but I did zero cardio. I went from, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 hours a week of cardio to zero, not half, which would have been quite enjoyable. If anyone's ever done like 90-minute cardio sessions and cut to 45, you feel like you're doing nothing,
Nothing.
right? Or 60 minutes to 30, you're just like, you feel like it's a warm up. But yeah, so like, I think when you go super extreme and hard, you just look at the show as like a finish line, and it should not be a finish line. The show should be a chapter in your fitness book, but there's a next chapter. The next chapter should be, okay, pull back a little bit and enjoy, but don't just completely abandon everything you were doing the
Yeah.
week before.
Yeah, it's a benchmark in your journey,
Right.
right? I mean, the best competitors we know, they live the lifestyle year round. That's not to say like they're living in a perpetual state of prep year round, right? But they're still like after the show, they're still following a plan, following a protocol, right?
Yep.
It's just with a little bit of a different focus. Now something else I do want to hit on, because this was another question that this person asked, and I think this is a great question because I get asked this quite frequently from my clients is, do as coaches, like, do we have a preference on when our clients do their cardio, as in like pre-workout, post-workout separately in the day? So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I have one requirement, if at all possible, is
Okay.
do not do your cardio directly before you train.
That is exactly what I was going to say. Yep. Yep.
That is
No,
the worst
no,
time to do it.
no.
Any other time of the day, at least give yourself, if you're going to do it in the morning, at least give yourself a few hours before you're able to train again, get a good meal or 2 meals in. Um,
I love doing my cardio like first thing in the morning. I know you do as well, Paul. Like I just feel like it sets a really good tone for the day. And I think that it's nice to be able to just get up, do it first thing, and then you don't have to worry about it the rest of the day. Now, granted, if you train early in the morning, yeah, I would definitely agree with you, Evan. I never want people doing their cardio pre-workout. Now, I would say like that's different than if you're just wanting to maybe get on the treadmill and like walk on like a flat surface for 5 or 10 minutes to just kind of like warm your body up before a training session. But I generally do not want my clients doing their cardio before or right before they go in and train.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say is because I've experimented with this, and I find that if I do cardio too close to bedtime, it might keep me up a little bit. So if you have a scheduled bedtime that you want to hit, I would say give yourself at least an hour between the end of a cardio session, and even a training session. Anything that kind of elevates your heart rate and gets you kind of your body temperature up. Going to bed, you want to have your body temperature coming down and things like that. So, but yeah, you definitely don't want to do, if I'm going to do a cardio before a workout, it's going to be to get physically warm. I have a lot of friends that live up north and clients that live up north, and it's so cold, they have to do something to get their body temperature up before they train. But I'm not going to do cardio and then go try to lift weights. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. I mean, I generally say either do it separately in the day or directly post workout. And for most people like that don't have cardio equipment at home, they're usually going to be the ones doing it post workout. So that way they're not having to go to the gym twice a day. But I mean, I highly recommend if you're prepping, you're going to do your first bodybuilding competition. I think it is a game changer to have a piece of cardio equipment at home, whether that's, if you live in an apartment and you have an apartment gym, or like I have my Peloton bike, or I know a lot of people have like treadmills. Like, I think that's a game changer. Like, I can't imagine being deep into prep and not having cardio equipment at home that I can use and having to go to the gym so frequently to do that.
Yeah. I mean, cardio, it gets a bad rap. But for me, I just notice when I get up and do it first thing, I just feel better during the day.
Same. Digestion is better. I feel
Yep.
more energized. I feel less stiff. Yeah, I always say it's kind of like the making your bed of the fitness industry. Cause like they always say when you make your bed first thing in the morning, it's supposed to like
Yeah.
like good for you mentally. So I feel like that's the same way with like cardio first thing in the morning. And hey, I know we'll also probably get the question of fasted cardio versus fed cardio. And I think we've dabbled a little bit with talking about that on like old episodes, but with my clients, like I don't have a preference. There's really no scientific like benefit on, one or the other. I think it just depends to which one, or it depends on which one you like. Some people really like doing cardio first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. I think if you're going to do that, that's fine. Just make sure you follow it up with a meal. But I don't tell my clients that like they have to do fasted cardio or they have to do fed cardio.
Yeah, look, if you hate cardio, get it done first thing in the morning if you can. That me, that's the easiest. I hate cardio.
Well,
Um,
what's funny, Evan? Like you say that hate cardio. I hated cardio because when I was, learning about fitness, cardio was associated with losing muscle. And so I was kind of always afraid of it. And then also, yeah, it kind of hurts when you're not used to it. I mean, even walking on an incline sounds easy. I promise you, if you haven't done it, it's so like, but I've learned to love it because now I understand that cardio is not preventing me from building muscle.
yeah.
And you got to find something that makes you enjoy it. Like I literally have my treadmill in front of a big screen TV. I watch series after series on there.
Yep.
So I
And
wake up
again,
excited.
I think part of it with me is I have so many sinus issues. Like I'm 100% blocked and like 95% blocked. It's really hard for me to breathe through my nose. It's hard for me to get deep breaths. Like even in track, like I was great at everything short. You put me anything over that, I was
You ever
good
get
at it,
those
but it
breathe
was,
right strips, or is
yeah,
it a
I do
nostril
wear those.
situation?
Yeah, they does help. Um, but it's one of those things it's not my cup of tea really. So I would rather do it first thing, but I always don't either. Um,
Well,
the
you were
truth is,
doing a
it's
lot of
way
just getting steps, right? Last prep, you were
last
like
prep I
walking.
did like 2 days of actual cardio. Yeah, everything was just step based. Then I would get up and I'd walk in the morning, and that was
Yeah, I
that was great
remember.
for me. I wasn't too far away from stage weight. I did most of the things with diet. But I can tell you when I do have more body fat to go and I know cardio needs to be a plan in it. Again, to me, it's how high can you get your heart rate, right? So I typically can get my heart rate up more post training because my heart rate's already slightly elevated. So then I just go right to my cardio equipment. It's easy to get a heart rate up, easier to maintain it. And I found that works a little bit better for me with
Yeah.
that. But every person, again, is different, right?
I
Yeah,
will
I used to do my cardio post training when my schedule was like packed and I only had that 2 hours at the gym.
Mhm.
So, if I didn't have equipment at my house, that's probably when I would do it.
Oh, but Paul, like when I go on get my steps in, that was a non-negotiable, right? I would get up every morning and
Right.
go on a minimum of a 30-minute walk. I would listen to podcasts. That was the best part of my day
Yeah.
with
Evan,
that.
I have
Yeah.
a vivid memory of, I remember, I think you were in prep and it was a weird morning, or I happened to be out
I saw
walking
you. Yep.
before the sun came up, and it was when you lived by me, and I literally
Yep.
remember walking and I was like, wow, that guy looks like a bodybuilder. And then I was like, oh wait, that's Evan. And it was like, what, in the 6 a.m. hour, because it was dark out still.
It
So
was probably, yeah. I would get up at like 4:30 and go on my walks. Yeah.
yeah, that was funny. Well, I will say, I think there's only truthfully like one cardio modality that I don't like to speak in absolutes that much, but I feel like you guys will probably agree with me. I'm not a huge fan of running during prep. Like I just and I'll it's funny because I even have clients that they'll inquire with me and they're just like, I'll ask them, is there anything that you can't do due to, an injury or a training constraint or anything like that? And they'll be like, no, but I don't like running. And it's almost like they expect that I'm going to build running into their protocol or that they have to run to lose body fat. But truth be told, I don't encourage running in prep. I mean, I have some clients that like to dabble a little bit with running outside of prep because they enjoy it, and that's fine. But it's not something that I generally really like to use in prep.
No, I agree. And
Yeah.
again, it's because it's systemically fatiguing, right? That's why a lot of people that are heavier somehow think running is a great idea. Like, how hard is that going to be on your legs and knees and ankles and everything else? It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's a lot of repetitive
Well, there
pounding.
is there is actually research on the interference effects between, muscle building and endurance training, right? There are a lot of muscle fibers in our body that are transitional, right? It's not just type 1 and type 2. There are dozens and dozens of muscle fiber types that can become something, right? Based on what you do. So if you run more, those muscle fibers are going to go more towards the endurance type, which are smaller. And if you lift heavier and don't run, you're more likely to build more muscle fiber. That's obviously genetically predisposition, but I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to sacrifice muscle by going for a run a couple times a week unless you're an athlete that needs to run. If you need to run for your sport, great. But the only time a bodybuilder is ever running is when their name is called backstage and they're not on stage yet. That's it.
I love
Right.
that, Paul. I love that. Well, you know what? I came from, so when I quit gymnastics, competitive gymnastics, my thing before I got into bodybuilding was running. I'm not knocking running. Like some people do it and they love it, and like that is totally fine. And I loved it while I did it, but I did a few half marathons in high school and loved it during the time. But I'll be honest, like when I look at my physique then compared to my physique when I stopped running and I started doing more weight training, and using cardio a little bit more sparingly, like that yielded the physique that I actually liked the look of. Like I looked like an athlete. I had that muscle. I had that definition. Whereas when I was running, I I never really, and I always remember thinking this at the time. I never really thought I looked the part. I was always like, wow, I'm working so hard. I'm busting my ass all the time. Like I don't think anybody would really know if they just saw me on the street. They wouldn't look at me and think like, oh wow, she is an athlete and she works really hard. Like I never really looked the part. So it's just been interesting to see the difference in my body composition from being a runner and a cardio bunny to, being more weightlifting centric. And, also something that happened to me when I ran, and I think this happens to a lot of people, is if you do it for long periods of time and you're doing it so much, that repetitive motion can sometimes lead to like little stress fractures in your foot or in your ankle. And not that those necessarily like, you know, cause you to be on crutches, but usually it does kind of interfere with like you can't be on your feet as much. So that's something, I just wouldn't want to risk that in a prep.
Well,
And
in my opinion, running is the most adaptive form of cardio, meaning you get better at it really quickly, which sounds good, but
Mm.
if you're better at it, you're burning less calories doing the same amount. So yeah, it's just not
and
something that I would use.
And look, this is anecdotal, right? But it's also bro science becomes real science to a certain degree with it. Um, everyone, I ran track at University of Georgia. I grew up running track. There, look at like a decathlete or a sprinter's physique and look at a distance runner's physique. They are completely different. And I'm not even talking about major distance. You can look at a 400-meter runner and a 200-meter runner next to an 800-meter runner. It's a massive difference. One has more muscle. They're both lean. They both look great, but it's different body types, right? Part of that is genetic disposition as well, but part of that is the fact,
Well,
especially
and
you get to the highest levels, people are doing it
so I
time
love
after
that
time.
analogy because I used to use it too, but then someone pointed this out to me, Evan, and it might change your opinion. The reason the guy is the 100-meter sprinter is because he looks like that. He doesn't look like that because he's a sprinter, right?
Yeah, it's genetics. Yeah.
Those are your like type 2 phenom athletes.
Yeah.
But I agree, you're gonna transition more towards one or the other. I promise you, there's nobody that's running a sub 3 mile marathon, 3 minute, 3 hour marathon that looks jacked, right? And
No.
before anyone on here goes, but Nick Bear, listen, Nick Bear is an amazing athlete, but if you think he looks anywhere near as good as he does as a bodybuilder when he's running, you're like, look up how gifted he is at bodybuilding to even carry any muscle when he's running these marathons, and he's amazing. But he's a shell of his bodybuilding self, but he has different goals. But yeah, that's yeah.
I completely understand what you're saying with all of that. And yeah, sprinting is a lot genetics too, just like strength is a lot of genetics.
Yeah.
That's why I like the comparison of like a 400-meter runner and 800-meter runner, because they're both not really like the shortest distance on
Right.
there.
They're just yeah.
But they look very different. And then look at an 800-meter and a 1600-meter, right? Like even those little small gaps on it,
1600 the
do look
mile.
different.
Is that
Yeah.
yeah.
Or 1500 is what it would be in track, which is 100
Yeah,
meters short.
but it's basically a mile. They're running that sucker in like under 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But that's
crazy.
much more endurance based than 10 seconds or 20 seconds like the 100
For sure.
200.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else that we haven't covered on like the topic of cardio that you guys want to touch on?
I think we covered fasted fed. We covered all the modalities. We talked about targeting body parts for fat loss. I mean, I think that pretty much covers it.
So I think
Yeah.
this was a good, like, kind of like just deep dive on the topic in its whole, especially relating to prep. And hopefully this kind of gives people a clear picture of how, as coaches, like we look at cardio and how we look at it as a variable for fat loss. Because we talk about this all the time, but I feel like some people just, I mean, it seems simple to us, but a lot of people don't understand it on this type of like, realm or this level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think another misconception that's still kind of around is that we do cardio fasted because in the morning your blood sugar is lower, so you're going to burn fat versus glycogen, and that's false because two things: A, your muscles store glycogen, so it doesn't matter. B, the energy source that you use in cardio is based on the intensity of the exercise. So lower intensity is going to preferentially burn more body fat, and higher intensity is preferentially going to burn more glucose or carbohydrate based. But at the end of the day, none of those matter. It matters the gap you're creating in the energy deficit. But if you want to do something that's, it's the most fat burning. I saw this the other day. I was looking up some research. When we are asleep, we are like almost 100% fat burning. So you could make the statement like sleeping is the best thing you can do to lose body fat because you're so low intensity that your body is basically, lipolytic. It's just breaking down fat for energy. So
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, sleep is so important. I laugh at myself back. Like, I remember in high school, I would barely get any sleep every night because I was so like I was involved in everything, and I just remember like holding it as a badge of honor. And now I look back and I'm like, why was I bragging almost or holding myself to a pedestal by like getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep every night? Like that's not it's not something to be proud about, but
yeah, actually, so I decided last night, I was like, you know what? I'm a little behind on my sleep. I've been like kind of burning the candle at both ends between myself and the kids and blah, blah, blah. So I said, I'm going to bed at 9:30 because I've been getting up at 5:30. And I had adjusted my morning time wake up, but I had not adjusted my bedtime. So I was still going to bed at like 11:30 and getting up at 5:30. So I said, I'm going to bed at 9:30, get my 8 hours. I dropped 5.5 pounds last night. I was like, let me check my weight before bed. And I was
Oh
like,
my,
wow.
oh, you dropped. Okay, so you went to
You
bed.
push a lot of water, yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah,
then
I mean, I just, I went to bed heavier than I did the day before. And I was like, oh man, I'm not going to hit a new low. I still hit a new low. Because I'm doing, if you guys haven't been watching, I wake up and do 60 minutes every day right now to kick off the new year to talk about our challenge. But I'm also dieting. I just want to get a little bit leaner. So I've been doing a short on my YouTube, like the shorts, they're like 1 minute. And I've been documenting every day and I'm down 2.5 pounds in 9 days. And I had Mexican for lunch yesterday. I had ice cream 2 days ago. I had alcohol this weekend. I'm literally not changing anything but just doing this walk.
that's
So
neat. Cool. All right. Well, I guess that kind of wraps it up. Any announcements that we have? I know our transformation challenge starts, well, it's officially open for enrollment.
yeah, you can download the training plans, you can download the nutrition plans. You can also sign up for the coaching at a discounted rate. All of our coaches you can just literally click on them and sign up with them. You can also speak to Sandy, our, client liaison, if you have any questions about it. And I think that's it. Yeah. I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about that in the next month. It kicks off in 1 month. I have found that it's too early in the year to do a transformation challenge like January 1st through the first couple of weeks. We're cleverly having our challenge start the day after the Super Bowl.
Perfect.
Nice.
So college football will be done. Pro football will be done. Every man in America will be like, what do I do?
There needs to be a national movement and a vote to make sure that Super Bowls do not happen on Sundays and college national championship football games do not happen on Monday nights.
I think that's always been the case though, right?
I know. It's so frustrating. I don't understand it.
So next Monday is the national championship.
Yeah.
Then we've got the playoffs Saturday, Sunday. And I don't want to talk about the Bucks. I'm so heartbroken. And then 2 more weeks and then we'll be done. Yeah.
That's it. And that football doesn't matter anymore because my dogs are out. So
Dogs are out, the Bucks are out. Screw the rest of the world.
Yeah, since football doesn't really exist in my world.
Lexi,
football does not exist in this dojo, does it?
no sensei. And
I
honestly,
tried so many times to like go to games and understand it, and I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, it is the most. I just don't understand. That's why I
I
just
will
didn't do it.
say this. I went down kind of like a Netflix football documentary this last week, and there's one on the University of Florida from a few years ago, or when I first got there, called Swamp Kings. Watch the first half of the first episode. It's like 20 minutes. You want to understand why football is so respected and why people are so into it. That will completely paint a beautiful picture of it.
Okay. Oh
It
my
is.
God. It's like I want to like it, but I've tried so many times. I've been to games, I've tried watching, I've tried
Yeah.
having people explain it to me, and I just don't get it. So I'll watch that.
It doesn't really explain the X's and O's, but it'll show why people love it and why it attracts the people it attracts, how intense it is. I think it's very, very cool. And after that, you'll gain a lot of respect for it, I think. To me, it's just super interesting. I'll send you the Netflix link for it.
Yeah, send that over to me. I would like that. Cool. All right, well, that wraps up. And what are we? So if you've listened this far, you're post a comment, Queen Pearl. That's Evan's cat.
that's it.
No, you're
She
a
is a
real
queen.
listener if you comment Queen Pearl.
She's still
That's
here.
it. And we'll be at the Arnold. I don't know. Are you guys going to the Arnold? Has anybody
Yeah.
talked about the Arnold?
Yeah, planning on it.
All right,
Yeah, we
cool.
need to talk about that.
I will be there.
Yep. Yeah, I already got us a house. So
Sweet.
make sure you reserve your space in the house.
Reserved.
Do you have anyone competing? Because the show's Thursday this year, Evan.
Me, no. I had two girls that we were thinking about competing. One had to pull out of prep, unfortunately, and the other one had a surgery that was supposed to be, she thought, an in and out sort of thing. And then they were like, okay, you can't do anything for 2 weeks. So we're having to push that back. We'll just
Okay.
do girl power on that. But
Yeah,
no,
so
no
then you'll probably
competitors.
come in on Friday. I got to be there for the show Thursday.
Yeah.
Cool.
All
All
right.
right. All right.
Bye, guys.
All right.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for listening.